Welcome to the Perfect Life Awakening Show, hosted by Royce Morales. Royce has been a transformational facilitator, teaching groundbreaking, spiritually based courses for more than 4 decades. She is the author of 3 books about her teachings. Join Royce as she takes you on a journey into how to live your best life and find your true purpose through discovering the origins of subconscious, disempowering notions and releasing them. She talks with experts and inspiring people just like you who learned to trust their intuitive inner wisdom, which led to life-changing shifts. Today, her guests live an empowered existence and are helping change the world to a higher consciousness place based on truth and love. You deserve to awaken to, align with, and embody your true self and live a life filled with love. Transform yourself from triggered to empowered and create your perfect life. Here is your host, Royce Morales.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am excited, of course, today to welcome a very special guest, and she is going to talk about loving ourselves, something we all need to do and something that we find it really hard to do for some reason. Well, for lots of reasons, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But before I even introduce her, I want to mention that I do have a Substack, and I would love for you guys to follow it, read what I'm writing about. And it's called Royce's Ramblings, excuse me. And I'm also introducing or have introduced a new offering from what I do, and I call it Elevated Intensives, which is kind of a crash course in everything that I teach in my Perfect Life Awakening courses, but it's done individually. So you get the information and you also get personal guided sessions to help release some of that old stuff getting in the way of loving yourself and manifesting a joyful life. Deserving life. Also, and this is very exciting, through this wonderful organization, Om Times, I have been invited to lead a panel, and what the discussion is going to be about is awakening. What is awakening? What does it really mean? We're all striving for it, but we don't even know half the time what we're striving for. So we're going to have that on August 8th, which just happens to be a full moon. And I know nothing about astrology, but somebody said, oh, that's Lionsgate. So I don't know what that means, but I'm excited that that's the date we chose, 8/8. So mark it in your calendars. All right, so let me introduce my guest today. Dr. Marla Goldberrg with 2 R's. So if you're trying to find her and you don't put the 2 R's in there, you'll never find her. I discovered that the hard way. She is talking about the fact that a lot of us believe that if we were just perfect, life would be wonderful. Life wouldn't be so painful. And of course, that is a very strange false belief that we have, but it's something that runs us most of the time. And I find, and she also finds, that the more we strive for that perfection, the more painful life can become. So, yes, I've been there, done that. Yes. So she has endured personal obstacles in her life, and she's going to share about that. And now she helps other people get past those notions and really love themselves. And her desire is to spread the word about all that, to help others release repressed emotions and learn to forgive and obtain true self-love. Whatever self-love is, I hope she's going to define what that is. She's a doctor of metaphysics and healing. She's an intuitive, a public speaker, a teacher, best-selling author. Welcome, Marla. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Royce. I'm so happy to be here with you and your guests, your listeners.
Yes. And by the way, I always forget to mention this. If you're watching live, feel free to send us a message or a question or just, thumbs up, whatever you want to send. It'll show up right on our screen and we'll be able to communicate with you. So first of all, tell us your story. Tell us how you came to do what you're doing and the obstacles that you went through. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Are you sure this is only an hour show?
Sorry.
No. So, like many of us, right? And I didn't even realize like how dysfunctional my life was. But from the very beginning, my life was totally dysfunctional. And on top of the dysfunction going on between my parents and, of course, family members, we all have our stuff. But there was a lot of judgment and a lot of criticism and a lack of support and a lack of guidance and direction throughout my life, especially my early life. And there were special people in my life that helped steer my ship, but they were not, they could only go so far because you don't know what you don't know, which is, quite a bit. And then going through making similar mistakes over and over again, getting similar results, trying to be, as you mentioned, perfect. I tried to do everything perfectly. Guess what? It didn't change my life. It didn't make it more perfect. It made it still as challenging as ever. And because I had so much going on in my head, I was not able to um, listen to my guidance, receive my guidance. Because one thing I learned while going on my path is you have to get quiet. If you don't get quiet, you're not going to hear it because spirit doesn't yell at you. It pretty much whispers or it gives you a gentle nudge. And if you're not paying attention, you can very easily miss the symbols. But going back to, I was in my first marriage and it was so horrible. And it was abusive. And it just was like, I was like a deer in headlights, not knowing what to do because I went into a deep depression. And I was stuck. I was so totally stuck in my life. And there was a women's conference. And at the women's conference, there was a gal who was talking about how to heal yourself. And there was a little voice, this little voice actually came through, which said, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? And I was supposed to go with a friend who begged off at the last minute. And I normally wouldn't go, but I went anyway because that little voice kept repeating itself. And as I was waiting for the lecture to begin, I was going up and down and looking at all the exhibitors. And I stopped at a table, and it happened to be the woman who was going to lecture, who ended up becoming my first metaphysical teacher. Wow. And for the longest time, I couldn't understand, what she was talking about. And then, the light went on. And I finished her, 9 triennial classes, graduated my first metaphysical school, and thought, okay, I'm just going to go live my life. Well, Spirit has other plans for you. And when Spirit has plans for you, trust me when I tell you, you might try to do things, but they're going to make sure that you go back to the path, as yes. I'll refer to it. Yes. And so I was then introduced to SRT, Spiritual Response Therapy, which is one of my absolute favorite clearing and healing modalities. It's very powerful. It turned my divorce around. So I was a client before I was a practitioner of it. And in doing so, what it does is it removes blocks, programs, interferences, both on this life and your past life through your Akashic records. And it did a 180 on my divorce because it was going one way. And at the end of the day, it went 180 degrees in my favor. And I said, okay, I need to learn this. But my education kept going and going and going. And then I found Delphi University, which is in McKaysville, Georgia. That's where I got my doctorate and spent 2 years studying there, various modalities, very interesting modalities, by the way. And when I graduated and got my doctorate, I didn't stay down for long because now I'm working on honing my psychic medium skills, working with this couple, and they go under my mediumship umbrella. But the point is I just keep learning. There's so much you could learn from the day you're born to the day you die, and there's still more.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a thumbnail of my progress.
I think what you just said is important because we live in a fast food world, and everybody wants instant enlightenment and instant change. And I'm thinking as you're talking that that could be why some of us think that if we're just perfect, everything will be okay. So if I lose 20 pounds, then the right guy will show up, everything will be fine in my life, because that's like an instant fix. But the deeper fixes, like you said, they could take a lifetime. And I don't even want to call them fixes, the unfolding or the remembering or the getting in touch with who you really are can take a lifetime.
Exactly. But there are some people, the younger selves, this is a learning. This is because they haven't learned this before. And what is wonderful to know is no matter how much education you get in one lifetime, it's never a waste because you take it with you when you incarnate.
That's true.
You take it with you to the other side. And though you may not remember it the way you're experiencing it in this life, you still don't lose what you learn. And your ascension still stays ascended. You don't go down unless you go down. But most people who are ascending, don't do the more lower vibrational actions to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you get it, it's there. It's just a process of remembering, really.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So talk about why people have such a hard time just loving themselves. I know there's tons of reasons, but what are some core reasons why we just can't say, wow, I love you, Royce?
Well, it starts with who we choose to bring in as our parents, because before we incarnate, believe it or not, and this was a hard one for me to wrap my mind around, we choose our parents, our siblings, and we know our experiences before we come in. The thing is do you remember Men in Black? And, they did that amnesia gun at you and everything gets erased.
Right.
Well, that's what happens when you come out the wound. You get shot with that amnesia gun, hypothetically, and all these memories go away because if you had the memories, it would get in the way of what you're here to learn, what you're here to heal, and what you're here to do. And so, then we get these parents. I'm going to start with parents or grandparents, but whether they're knowingly doing it or unconsciously doing it, there's judgment, there's criticism. They forget that us little kids, little babies, are sponges. They hear what's going on. They take in, and if somebody goes, oh, so-and-so has a funny nose, well, guess what? That's imprinted on you. Whether it's meant to hurt you or not, these things are embraced on an energetic level because everything is energy. And then as we get older, more people come into our lives, classmates, teachers, other authority figures, religious figures, and they all make their comments, they make their criticisms, they make their judgments. Well, we as living sponges take it in, and then we go, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. They're judging me. They're criticizing me, though they may not be able to wrap their mind around those exact words, but they know that something's wrong. And then they start doing things to try to be perfect because if they're perfect, I'm not going to be judged. I'm not going to be criticized. I'm going to be accepted. Not always the case. And most times it isn't the case. And all you do is drive yourself crazy because, let's face facts, there is no such thing as perfection. And we're not here to be perfect. We're here to learn. We're here to heal past traumas and the things we are dealing with, experience in this lifetime.
Yeah.
So that's why people have a hard time loving themselves. And then, of course, I'm sorry, I just have to have one more part. Let's talk about social media. Let's talk about advertisements. Let's talk about, the perceptions that marketers put out there of what will make us, quote unquote, perfect. Perfect skin, perfect body, perfect clothes, perfect hair. Well, guess what? None of it is going to happen. You're always going to find something that isn't perfect. The important part is to say, but that's a part of who I am, and I like who I am. And it's learning how to really like yourself, which helps you learn to love yourself. As I always say, warts, wrinkles, and all.
Yeah. So one of the things that I teach in my courses is that somebody can say negative things to you day and night all day long, forever. And the only reason it would have an impact on you is that there's part of you that already believes that. So if I believe that I'm stupid, I arrive here with that notion for some reason, brought with me or whatever, and I have parents that start telling me that, and I buy into it, it's because I already have that belief. They're just reminding me of that. They're
Reinforcing it, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that? Do you get into that with your work?
I do. I feel that, yes, people, that's what I was saying, the authority figures in our life, they reinforce things that we have. Do we bring things from the other side? Yes, we do. And we do need to work on them. We need to acknowledge what they are and work on them, because let's forget, the perfection, but it starts to allow us to say, hey, I'm not so bad. This isn't a horrible thing. When I was in my beginning, early in my path, I read Debbie Ford's, was it Dark Night of the Light Chasers, I think the book is, but it talks about the duality of the soul and knowing that sometimes you have to stand up for yourself. So being a little assertive or aggressive, which is always used in a negative, like you're so aggressive, like it's a bad thing, but it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes you have to stick up for yourself. When you learn to stick up, because sticking up for yourself is putting boundaries up. Boundaries are something that most people don't really have delineated. They might a little bit, or they don't at all. But more and more people are becoming very aware of how important boundaries are. But it helps not allow people to project their negative stuff on you.
Yeah. But
I know I missed something, but feel free to
Oh, yeah, you kind of lost for a second there. But what I wanted to say was, I think that's important to a degree, but if I find that people take that notion and kind of use it to block the opportunity to see what's being shown to them about themselves. In other words, if I believe that I'm stupid, I keep using that example, and I have parents that keep telling me I'm stupid,
Yeah.
by putting boundaries up and saying, stop saying that, I'm missing the opportunity to really look at what that's about for me. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like,
I do, and I think there's two sides to that, and I think you're right with what you're saying, but because it's impressing it. But first of all, you have to become mature enough to understand to put boundaries up. Now, let me preface that. But people, when people keep projecting their negative stuff, like you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid, using your example, yes, you take it in and you begin to believe you're stupid and you do stupid things so that they could reinforce you're stupid. When you start becoming aware of, wait a second, I'm not so stupid. And I'll share a story with you on the other side of this. I'm not so stupid. That's when you start, understanding that this isn't necessarily you. So when I was graduating high school, my freshman year science teacher came to the graduation, and she said, I remember you. You're the dumb blonde with brown hair.
oh God, wow.
Okay, right. What is that enforce? But meanwhile, I know I'm not dumb. So, internally, there was like I couldn't bring it in because it's no. I thought it was rude. I thought it was inappropriate. But at 18 years old, I'm like, but I'm not dumb. And once I realized I wasn't, was the beginning of me at least taking hold of some of my power of knowing who I am, and being dumb or stupid wasn't one of them. So I think that people can start gaining awareness, contrary to what people are projecting on them, to start going, well, wait a minute, I'm not stupid. Why do they keep calling me stupid? What am I doing? But at some point you realize it's really not about you when you go down the path and you learn more. It's really a projection of these people showing who they are to you. So, but I agree with your point as well, Royce.
Yeah, because I find that if you really don't believe that you're stupid, really, not just acting like it, but if you really don't believe you're stupid, you don't have to put up a boundary. You don't have to say, don't say that to me anymore, because it rolls off your back. It's like, oh, that's just their stuff.
To a point, yes, but boundaries are very healthy. I feel boundaries are very healthy. Let me clarify it that way. And that, if somebody is saying things like, you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid, at some point, it's sort of like, you need to stop because I know differently. And if you want to believe that, you believe it. But, you've got to stop saying it to me because, it's not affecting me. The other thing, too, is when people find out that their projections are not affecting you, they'll find something else to project on you. They'll stop calling you stupid. They might call you something else, but they're not going to call you stupid anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's change the subject just a little bit and let's talk in kind of bigger terms right now. What about what's going on right now in the world? I know that everything you're saying about loving yourself, there's nothing that's more important. But how difficult is it to do that right now when there's so much going on around us and so much chaos and craziness and all that? What do you say about all that?
Well, I think we need to look at two sides. Let's look at self-love for ourselves. You can still be on a path to self-love with all the noise going on outside and all the negative stuff because that it's a separate issue. Now, how people might upset the balance of your, you being on your path. And again, something that happened to me is you voice your feelings. You have a right to an opinion, First Amendment, right? And then where I was called woke and I was, attacked because of my beliefs. Well, guess what? Woke means aware. So I'm okay being woke. I have to put that out there. But it didn't change my self-love. I feel that what's going out there can make people nervous, uncomfortable, give you insecurity because that's what media is putting out there, whether it's social media or commercial media like MSNBC or Fox News or something like that. And, it's done to bring a lot of noise and make things rocky. And when I say rocky, I don't mean like the up and down challenging, which it could be, but I'm talking about like unbalanced to keep you like unsure of what's going to happen and what's going on out there. But as I say that, I still say self-love is self-love. And if you love yourself and if you accept yourself and have faith in knowing that you're protected or knowing, your inner knowing light is just, on and bright, then all this stuff can go on around you and it can affect you a little bit, but it's not going to affect you the way it might affect somebody else, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to go back, and we need to take a break in a couple minutes, but I want to go back to something you said that I'm agreeing with on one level, but on another level, based on my own personal experience, just want to throw it into the mix. When you said that a lot of times spirit or higher consciousness or the universe comes to us in a whisper,
Yes.
little nudge. In my experience of being nudged, in the butt,
Mm-hmm.
it can come very strong
Yes.
messages. So why do we have, well, I know the answer for me. I needed to be kicked in the butt, but a lot of people just miss those little tiny subtle messages and whatever. What do you say about that?
I say you're right because, most of the time they will be subtle, but here's what I've learned from my personal experience. And okay, I'm just going to share a quick story about the first time I saw a spirit energy. And when the first time I saw it, I was having lunch. Now I had learned that it doesn't make a difference. But anyway, I saw the energy. I was having lunch. I put it out, I said, when I'm done, because she wanted me to relay a message to somebody. And she's spiritual form, right? She was murdered when she was 17, strangled, this gal. And so I went in the back to where we were. And what was interesting is that we were talking to this woman who was telling us her story, and she's tapping me on the shoulder. And at first the tap was gentle, very, very soft, like I told you, but I didn't move on her speed. She wanted me to say something, and she wanted me to say something right away, but I had to wait for a segue, because if I just blurted it out, people would have looked at me like I had 3 heads. So I'm waiting. I'm just pacing my time. And let me tell you something, these taps are getting harder and harder and harder. And she's really pushing me to say it. I finally tell her what she wanted, the message she wanted me to share. She disappeared like that. But she wanted me to, she was getting her point across that you need to tell them this now. Another story is, before I started my practice, Spirit, I was sound asleep. I was traveling with my husband. Spirit screamed at me. So this was not gentle, in this big, loud, booming voice, that I needed to start a practice and start being of service. And I wake up and I look around. My husband's sleeping. And I'm like, who said this? Who's in my room? So you're 100% right. Spirit can get very loud and very pushy. I had a guest on my show where Spirit pushed her off a cliff to get her attention.
Oh, wow.
Not physically, but in the spiritual. No, not physically, but in the spiritual. Because at first when she was telling the story, I said that too. So yeah, if you're not getting it, Spirit's going to find a way to kick you in the booty. And kicking you in the booty can also mean it's going to, if you don't change your ways, it's going to keep bringing you the same thing that's going to give you same results when you want different results. And what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Yeah.
So,
one of my mottos is Spirit will do whatever it takes, whatever is going to work for this person. That's what will, and for me, it was kicking me in the butt. For somebody else, it could be pushing them off a cliff, whatever it is. But,
exactly.
So we need to take a bit of a break. I'm talking to Dr. Marla Goldberg with 2 R's, and we'll be right back.
Om Times TV. Do you crave joy but feel stuck? Do you go through life feeling constantly triggered and frustrated? Fear is likely the culprit, and subconscious fear is likely sabotaging you. Perfect Life Awakening is a time-tested, spiritually based approach to inner transformation created by Royce Morales. For over 40 years, she has helped people get to the origins of subconscious fears and ultimately help them find their true purpose and a life full of joy. Sign up for Perfect Life Awakening today at roycemorales.com. You deserve to go from triggered to empowered, shifting your life with Perfect Life Awakening. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat apples apples and bananas.
Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back. I am chatting with Dr. Marla Goldberg today, and we're talking about self-love, something that is so important, I think, like crucially important. What the world would be if everybody just loved themselves, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think that if everybody would truly love themselves, they'd be kinder to others. They'd
Yeah.
be kinder to themselves, number one, but more importantly, they'd be kinder to others. And I don't think we'd find this kind of strife going on if we could get more people on the path.
Yes, I absolutely agree. So you mentioned in your bio that you sent me that you have 50 different techniques that you use with others. Can you share maybe the most powerful and how that works and what you do to help other people to love themselves?
So I think, so I've been trained in over 50 modalities. So I'll just clarify it that way. Again, my favorite I mentioned earlier, spiritual response therapy, so powerful. Such an incredibly powerful modality in terms of helping one to heal, because it works with the Akashic records. It works with past life issues as well as current life issues. And the cool thing, what I've learned with SRT, spiritual response therapy, is that I clear something, let's say for you, Royce, from a past life. Well, that past life gives you a thread into your current life, which threads into future incarnations. Well, if you clear what happened in the past, it clears what happens in the present, and it stops it from showing up in the future. And it's just, and again, you can do it if I clear something in present life, it breaks the thread to the back, and it breaks the thread to the future. So an incredibly powerful modality. That's my favorite healing modality.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that works? What is the technique?
So the technique is, there's a book of charts. So you have your number one chart, and then it's broken down from there. A reverend, I'm trying to, oh my God, my brain is just, I just had a blank moment. I'll figure out, but they're out of Washington State, the association, Spiritual Response Therapy Association. But you take it's a dowsing modality, and the first chart shows you where you'll find these blocks, programs, interferences that need clearing. Some of them need research. Some of them you can just clear, but it just shows you where it is. If it needs research, it's a more involved situation with more detail and more energies and emotions specifically attached to that block, program, interference wound, and you clear it. And the great thing about it is that it really does work. But with the caveat with anything, earlier you were talking about healing and how people just want instant gratification. They just want to be healed. What people who work with healers and I'm not saying this about everyone, this is broad stroke, is that you have to participate in your own healing. You can go to a practitioner who can help you, but you need to be able to be a participant. So, for example, if you came to me as a client, I would tell you about the process. We would do the process. But I would always say, just allow it to assimilate. Just go on with your day after you're done. Don't think about anything. Don't refer back to it. Just let it go. Because if you start thinking about the issue, let's say it's depression, and I do all this work, with you and for you, and then the minute I'm done and say, how do you feel? It's like, well, did you clear the depression? You will just undo everything I did. And that's your participation in it. So you as a client, just if you just drink a lot of water and get on with your day and try not to think about what happened, you're just doing yourself a service, a big service. Excuse me. Other modalities, I love helping people through psychic mediumship. And because when a spirit comes through, whether somebody's just doing a psychic reading, which is talking about the person who is referred to as the sitter, or the communicator, who might be an ancestor from another, or somebody you know who's transitioned, giving you message. It's all here to help you in your current. So I love doing that with people. Excuse me. And you notice I say with people, not for people, because it just um, it's we're collaborating. You know, it's not just one person handling it. It's a collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would getting in touch with somebody's ancestors and doing a psychic reading, how would that help someone to love themselves?
Because a lot of times people who transition, the people who are left behind, there's unfinished business. And so self-talk, right? So you talk about, oh, I feel bad. I didn't say goodbye. We had an argument, or we had crosswords, or we didn't, you know, we were estranged, whatever it might be. And now I'm so sorry. And then you have start with negative self-talk. When a communicator from the other side comes, number one, it proves they haven't left you. And that whatever happened between you two happened, they're not angry. They've let it go. They've forgiven. And a lot of time, that is a piece that the sitter needs to hear, to know that there's no hard feelings and that they're around, and all they're doing is wanting to give love and not more of whatever they fought about or whatever the disagreement might or estrangement might have been about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's how mediumship helps somebody in on their journey to self-love. Because if they know that somebody who they had an argument with who's no longer on this earth will forgive them, then they can learn to forgive themselves, which is harder than forgiving another being.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's really important. I find that that's what things just really boil down to, is self-forgiveness. So what other techniques do you do that would help somebody forgive themselves and let go of all that guilt?
So I've written a book. It's called My Fucking Long Journey to Loving Myself, A Guide to a Shorter Path. I'll just show the cover on the video. And in the back of this book, so it's my biography, but when I was doing it, Spirit kept guiding me and telling me to add techniques. So in the back, I have 14 techniques of various kinds of releasing repressed emotions, because that gets in the way of loving yourself. Because if you can't emote and get it all out of your system, it's eating, you know, that phrase, eating you alive, is a true phrase, because it really, you know, affects you mentally, physically, emotionally, if you don't allow it to release. So there are techniques to doing that. There's techniques to forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving others. There's techniques about accepting yourself. You know, exercises to do about forgiving yourself and accepting yourself. And all of these help one in their healing process to their self-love. And it's steps, right? If you don't release the emotion that you've repressed, how do you let in love? It's like people have built walls around their hearts because they don't want to be hurt again. Well, you think you're protecting yourself, but you're not, because not only can't you feel someone else's love towards you, somebody can't feel your love towards them. And then you find that you're always running into a brick wall. And these metaphors come up for a reason,
Yeah.
you know, in these sayings. And then, you know, the forgiveness part of self-love. Forgiving another being is a gift you give yourself. It's not a gift you give them. I can't tell you how many clients I had who'd say, why would I want to do that? Why would I forgive them? They're the ones who did it. But forgiving them allows you more freedom. You know, it's sort of like if you have chains binding you, it breaks those chains, because you're not letting them off the hook. You're letting yourself off the hook from what they might have done. But the self-forgiveness, which is the hardest, I think, of all, which are exercises in self-forgiveness in the book. But, you know, we wouldn't talk to our worst enemies the way most of us talk to ourselves. You know, that, you know, like you said, you started with, I'm stupid, or you know, or I'm so this, or I'm so that, and it's all negative. Well, when you start forgiving yourself, the negative goes away. And part of forgiving yourself is gratitude for what you have, acknowledging the gratitude you have in your life. A lot of people just take it for granted, what they have or what they don't have. But as you notice, people focus more on what they don't have than what they do have. But energetically, energy flows where thoughts go. So if you keep thinking towards the negative, I don't have, like I'm broke, guess what? You're not going to get rich telling yourself you're broke. It's against spiritual law. If you say, I might not have it now, but you think about ways, yes, I am abundant. I am, through this. I have a roof over my head. I have food on my table. And spirit gives you more of what you think of. So if you think more positively, you get more positively.
Wow. So back to the techniques of forgiving yourself. Can you share one of those techniques for our audience?
Yes. So this is a two-for technique, because it could be, forgiving somebody else or forgiving yourself. But it is about automatic writing. So if you don't know what automatic writing out there, as the audience, it's when you go into sort of a meditative trance, but before you come out of it, you have a pen and a paper near you. And before you totally come out of the trance, you pick up your pen and you just start writing whatever comes out. And you don't think about it. You don't judge. You don't criticize. You don't edit. You just write. And at the beginning, if you don't know what to write, say, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. But something will click in and you will write it. And if it's about forgiving somebody else, you could start saying, I'm going to forgive you because though you did X, Y, and Z, this is how it affected me, and I'm going to forgive you so it doesn't affect me anymore. This is just hypothetical. But you can do the same with forgiving yourself, too, with this process. And then, as I like to say, when you're done writing, it could be 1 page, it could be 20 pages. That's totally up to you, what comes out of you and what you need to process on the paper. Give yourself a break, stand up, stretch your legs, get a beverage, go to the bathroom, whatever you might need. Sit back down, go into another trance or a meditative place. And then when you come out of it, start writing, you set the intention, I'm going to write a response. And then you automatically write your response. Again, don't read it while you're writing it. Don't judge, don't edit, don't critique it, just write. When you're done with that, there's an optional third step. The optional third step, once you get up and stretch your legs, could be you can respond as spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, going back into that meditative place, coming out, and then just writing in the place of that higher self or that higher spiritual being. When this is all said and done, then you take another break, then read the letter you wrote to yourself about forgiving. Read the response to yourself about forgiving. And then if you did the third option, read what Spirit said to you. And you'll find that it is so cathartic in what you will receive. And this is all done from Spirit and your high self.
What about with my clients? I always take them another step where I have them determine something they can do in the real world as a statement of forgiving themselves or a statement of forgiving others. Is there some sort of action that goes with that for you?
I think the action depends upon what the situation is, because we have a lot of, we have a lot of facets, we have a lot of situation. So each one is different. But if it has something to do with not being lovable, for example, well, you can, affirmations. Louise Hay has great affirmations about loving yourself and learning how to love yourself. And I love myself because I know what kind of a heart I have. I know what a caring person I am. I know what my intentions are to other people. And they can walk away stating something like that. But if they're doing it themselves just from reading my book and I'm not working with them, this is something they'll have to determine on their own and create their own statement, self-statement to support it.
Yeah. So you don't encourage, gosh, I really don't forgive myself for saying that horrible thing to my mother when I was 3 years old. You don't say to them, well, is there some way to clean that up with your mom? Because I find that really kind of grounds the whole thing. It's like, oh, I finally said that to my mom after 50 years, that kind of thing.
Everything is so personal.
Yeah.
If you're having, and so individual, and if you're having like this issue with your mother, you can write a forgiveness letter to your mother. I'm sorry for saying this, and you could do this consciously. But you can always say you're sorry, even if they're not around to hear it. You can always forgive someone. It's energetic. It goes through the ethers. So, I mean, I don't know if, my belief system is just a little bit different than yours, but I believe that you can just say, Mom, I'm really sorry, because in 50 years, your mom might not be here for you to be able to say you're sorry too.
Yeah.
But they do hear you on the other side. So if you say, I'm sorry that I disappointed you, or I hurt your feelings, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, they're still going to get the message, and they're not going to hold it against you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that will help you on your path.
Yeah. And just as a personal story of doing that with my own mom when she was still alive, I was raised with a lot of issues with my mom, just put it mildly. And she was the most judgmental person I've ever met in my life. And I was raised with a lot of judgment and a lot of criticism. And once I was on my spiritual path and I did some inner work, and I started understanding that it was just me that I was judging. It wasn't her. And so I tried to write her. I actually did. I wrote her a letter, and I tried to explain it in very down to earth ways, and really watched how I said it. And I didn't sound woo woo, and I didn't sound spiritual. And I sent her this beautiful letter thanking her for being my best teacher in life. And I mean, I knew what I meant, but I just wanted her to know that I had evolved to a place where I could really love her. And she got that letter and she was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? I mean, she couldn't understand it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of a warning to people to just be really careful when you do take those action steps, that it might not be appropriate for the person that is getting those letters or those whatevers. Yeah.
But they might not even see that their action caused this, or they might not remember that you even did this.
Yeah.
Memories can be very Swiss cheesy, very holy. And I don't mean holy like spiritual. I'm talking about holes.
Yeah.
And so, I did that to a relative also. And she had no idea what I was talking about or anything else. So it was, but you did it. And here's the thing, whether they accept, the recipient is in human form or they've transitioned, they, whether they actually cognitively get it or not, energetically, it will touch their soul and it will touch their heart. So they might be like like I was talking earlier, too much in their head to understand what you're trying to bring to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's not about them anyway. It's about you. So there you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not about pleasing them.
Right.
It's about, making sure that you love yourself and you're doing the right steps with integrity.
Yes, definitely. So I also read in your bio that you're passionate about spreading this work around,
Yes.
helping people in a bigger way to get to that point of self-love. How is it that you're doing that? What are the action steps that you're taking?
Well, I work my steps personally every day,
Yeah.
for self-love, because like anything, it's like exercise. If you want a toned body, what do you have to do? You have to do the work. If you want to stay loving to yourself, you have to do the work. It's a never-ending process, and nor should it be ending, because what's so bad about loving yourself and making sure? And here's the thing, we will step off our course. We're human beings. We're meant to step off our course. But here's the piece. It's not about holding it against ourselves and again regressing. It's about saying, oh, I messed up. I'm really sorry. I'm going to do better moving forward. Just saying that alone to the ethers is as a way to just put forgiveness out there to yourself, and again continue then down on your path. Regarding clients and whatnot, I do it through my sessions. Through the sessions we talk about what's going on, and we will work on making sure that you understand that you can love yourself and still trip and fall and hurt yourself, but still love that you were clumsy, and laugh about it and not take it so seriously. We're just spiritual beings in a human form having these experiences so that we can learn and take our education with us to the next life, and hopefully not have to deal with it again because we've learned our lessons.
Yeah. As you were talking, a question came to me. I had a situation in my life years ago where I did some things that just didn't work out. There were a lot of things that got in the way of having something work out. And I have a particular relative that has a very different philosophy of life than I do. And this person judged me for all of these things that I did. And it took years for her to stop judging me. And what I realized is she was, again, just reflecting my own judgment on the choices that I made. And when I finally forgave myself, she literally called me up and said, I forgive you for what you did. And I see that you've really made some changes in your life. And it was such a good instant validation of, wow, I did the work.
Yes.
And I just want to remind people that situations where you are still judging yourself get reflected to you in some way. And when you resolve them, what gets reflected is, yay, you did it.
Exactly. Well, it is. It shows others, because you energetically start changing, which then people will perceive like, or your vibrational raise, and people will say, like, what's different about you? What
Yeah.
have you changed about you? In a positive, not in a judgmental way.
Yeah.
And then they all of a sudden start understanding that there's more than, that something's different. They might not know what's different, but that something's different.
Yeah, definitely. So tell us a little bit about your book. We only have a couple minutes, a little bit of telling us.
So you can get my book, My Fucking Long Journey to Loving Myself.
I love the title.
Thank you.
Title.
A Guide to a Shorter Path, on Amazon. And it's a very easy read. It just talks about, because when I started writing it, it was about, so I just want to clarify, when I started writing it, I did it through automatic writing, because I didn't know what my book was going to be about, but I knew I needed to write a book. And so half of the book was just automatically written. And I would go through the process I explained about the forgiveness letters. And I stopped and I said, I better see what I'm writing. And I started reading it, and it's like, oh, this is my life story. And I wrote it because many people think that what they're going through, that they're the only ones going through it, but they're not. And then, I can't tell how many people read my book and said, oh my God, I felt like your life was my life. Names might be different, people might be different, but very, very similar things going on. And so I did this to help them. And then Spirit said, add the techniques. And then to make it different, in my book, I share where I would have used the techniques and what techniques I would have used at the times prior to knowing and learning these techniques, these modalities of healing and helping. And so that's what my book is about. And hopefully, I know I've gotten a lot of, wonderful emails and text messages and messages just stating how helpful it's been to them. And that's being of service. That's of me being of service by sharing this.
Yay. Well, keep up the good work, and let's get everybody to love themselves and bring peace to this planet once and for all.
Absolutely.
And how do people get in touch with you?
So my email is Marla Goldberrg. Goldberg has 2 R's.com. I'm sorry, Goldberg@gmail.com. Or there's Marla Goldberg Healer, and this Goldberg only has one R, and there's a story, but we don't have time, at gmail.com. And you can, email me. You can find me on Facebook, Marla Goldberg, Goldberg having 2Rs.com. I'm on Instagram the same way. And, but I love emails and text messages. And if you have a question, please feel free to email me at Marla Goldberg Healer at gmail.com, Goldberg with one R.
Great. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Marla.
you, Royce. This has been wonderful. I appreciate you.
Awesome. And I will see everybody next Wednesday, and make sure to follow my Substack, Royce's Ramblings, and reach out to me as well at perfectlifeawakening.com. And thank you again. Keep up the good work.